I'll call this meeting to order. It is Thursday, July 24th, 2025. It's 8:30 a.m. and we're here to discuss courthouse safety and the courthouse safety assessment. I will turn it over to Commissioner Dose and we'll go from here.
And I'll ask the prosecutor to help me with this, but we have been in discussions about this. There was a assessment done by the court system of the safety and security of our facility and our personnel. This was a third-party assessment done, and it was the findings were confidential. This is why we have had to be careful with that. I'm proposing today that we start doing what I think over the next few months and potentially a year or two, that we start addressing some of those concerns and prioritizing them. The first one that we have talked about, and I walked off without my paperwork, but there was and we need to be careful about how we address these findings because they were confidential, and we don't want to reveal something that would endanger somebody or the building. But one of the things that was found is that we are short on manpower for security here. It was recommended two different recommendations. One was that we could hire a second security person. Of course, we're still trying to hire the first one, but that we could hire a second one, or that we could use the prosecutor's office as a, what was the term that they used for that? A force multiplier
for threat suppression.
For threat suppression. So by arming the prosecutor's office and having them go through that intruder training and stuff, that would be. So financially, I think it would be in the courthouse's best interest and the county's best interest, rather than trying to hire a new position in the sheriff's budget's already in trouble, that we simply work with the prosecutor's office, who's indicated a willingness to do that on our behalf, and try to arm them and get them through that training so that we have additional resources in the building if something should happen. And prosecutor and I talked about this long list of recommendations from this confidential report, talked about prioritizing. I think that this would probably be our first. So I'd recommend over the next few weeks, I'll keep bringing up these assessment items, but this would be the first one I think we should work on.
Okay. All right. So do we need a motion to approve that? Approve you to go out and take classes and so forth?
Yeah, I think you certainly could. I don't mind taking the reins on, doing whatever research I think needs to be done. I think internally, if we're going to be using the statutory exception that allows prosecuting attorneys to carry firearms within a courthouse facility, and I'm going to be equipping my attorneys and asking them to take on that burden, I think I'm going to want two things. I think internally, I'm going to want a firearms policy. So I'll need to draft a policy that my attorneys who are going to be armed and carrying are going to have to comply with. And then the second piece is I'm going to have to source out and identify what we're going to equip them with. That'll be a purchase that'll be brought before the BOCC, but I certainly don't mind doing the legwork, chatting with some of our local firearms distributors and seeing what kind of price points I can get. I also want to meet with the sheriff's office, probably their range master over there, and identify certain recommendations for what he thinks would be adequate for that purpose. We understand really kind of the goal of what would be accomplished here. This would be emergency use, right? So this is if there's a physical intrusion in the courthouse building and an emergency requires prosecuting attorneys to essentially act in defense of the public that's in the building and the employees that are in the building. So I certainly would want their input if I'm going to be asked to put together a policy in order to ensure that it comports with what they think would be adequate to serve that need. And then I guess the last piece, so perhaps there's three components here. The last piece is probably to identify, what is regular training going to look like? In other words, if we're going to be asking prosecuting attorneys to take on this additional role, saying, all right, you're going to serve in this emergency threat force multiplier to suppress threats in the building, what sort of training do you need to have to be adequately equipped in order to serve that role?
I think one of the things is I think you should probably contact the state police as well, because they're equipped with protecting courthouses and things like that, where a lot of our law enforcement do not have that.
Mm.
We have a little bit here, but I think that would be, and they would know what kind of training you should have your people go through, and maybe they can give you an idea.
You bet. Yeah. Yeah, I can reach out to Paul Berger. Use that as our starting point, because he's based out of District 1 here.
Yeah.
And see if he has a point of contact that he thinks would be a good source of information for that.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of a big step to be stepping into. Maybe it could be only temporary, or maybe it could be longer term. But we'll sure make sure that we can figure out something in the interim to see if we can get more of a full-time security officer if we can find it in the budget. But I appreciate your office doing that.
Especially knowing that you're already short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you haven't been able to fill that fourth position. Your folks are already working overtime, which I hope is a temporary thing. You can take care of that as well. But the confidential assessment that the courts had done did recommend, even if we ever got a second person, having force multipliers in the building, trained people who could respond would I think be a huge escalation to safety and security for people here.
Mm-hmm.
If intruders knew that they were going to run into potentially numerous people who would defend themselves,
mm-hmm.
That would be. So what do we need, Mr. Chairman?
I mean, if you guys just want to make a motion to task me with carrying out the directive and working with, and I know Commissioner Dose has been kind of the point of contact for the VOCC on this to this point, so I don't mind continuing to work with him. And once I get a policy put together internally, I'll iron it out. Once we identify, a price point for the equipment, I can put that before the VOCC, and we can look at kind of a start date to say this is when I'm going to try to get my prosecutors trained in order to be able to take on this new role. I'll probably internally set a start date for my office. So,
okay. Right, do you want to entertain a motion?
Okay. I motion that we task the prosecutor with this duty of getting the policy in place and the training plan in place and coming back to us with the pricing for the equipment.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. I think that's. Is there any other further questions?
I would recommend that we go on the agenda next week for the next item on the priority list, if that's all right. I'd like to get on the agenda.
One of the things I was wondering, because I know some of it has to do with, getting Randy involved a little bit. Have you talked to? Okay, good. All right. Any public comment?
Oh yeah, I think it's a terrible idea. I think your security needs to be sitting where Sean was sitting, and if somebody comes in, they actually can see them. Because the first floor, the ground floor, you guys are in all kinds of trouble. By the time these guys got over, the sheriff's office could be over here. I think this is a rotten idea. I think the sheriff needs to either lay somebody off and hire somebody in security over here, put them in Sean. And these guys aren't going to do it for free. They'll come back either this year or next year and want more money. So where's your savings? On benefits, but that's it. I think it's a terrible idea myself, but that's my opinion.
Good. Appreciate your input. All right. Anything further?
I would like to clarify, of course, we are still trying to hire that first position. That's still in the budget to hire Sean's replacement. They just simply haven't been able to find anybody to apply.
Okay. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. President.